just joining us, welcome back to the Influencer's Journey Show. And today, our topic is how increasing your impact can boost your income. So, like I said, one of the things that I talked about in the last episode is planning out your content and how laying out your content can increase your profits in 2023. And this is one of the most important things that you could do in your business as far as your marketing and as far as your social media. So if you haven't had the opportunity to check out the previous episode, you want to make sure that you head over into the group and then you want to watch that episode because I talked about several things, right? So, one of the things that I talked about was how do you lay out your content? So, in laying out your content, one of the things that we talked about is really getting clear on the conversations that you want to have inside of the marketplace and when those conversations will be happening and to be ahead of that. And the reason why you want to do that is because you want to alleviate that stress, that not knowing, that overwhelm, all of those things that people feel when it comes to social media. You want to make sure that you are being very strategic as well with the content, the type of content that you're putting out into the marketplace. And so all of those things, take time and they take planning. And so, like I mentioned before, as I was working through my goals for the year, and I took a look at what is it that I would like to, do for 2023. I looked at my revenue, what is it, my revenue goals, what I would like to see happen in the business this year. It made me really think on, what, how many people do I have to touch in order to make these things a reality? And so I thought it would be a great idea, to come ahead and unpack it on the show today. So, one of the first things that I want to take a minute to talk about when we talk about creating impact and the direct impact that impact has on your business, on your income, right, is your branding. And when we take a look at branding, I'm not only talking about the look of your business, like your imagery and the feel of your business. One of the things that I want everyone to really, take a look at is your messaging. And so your messaging is probably the most important part of your branding. And so when we take a look at our messaging, we first think of our divine clients. And so that's where I really want to start, is to make sure that you have a clear idea of who you are called to serve in the marketplace. And so, we talk about that all the time. Not only the demographics of your ideal client, meaning, their age, their gender, where they live, and all of that stuff. Not just the psychographics, their pain points, the things that they desire, what they would like to achieve, but we also talk about emotional branding as well. And the emotional branding is how well are you connecting to the heart of your divine client. And when we talk about branding and we talk about creating our brand message, this is the thing that distinguishes you from your competition. And this is one of the things that I would love for everyone to get. So sometimes we think that it's a product that we put out there or it's a service that we provide. But stop and think about it for a second. We're not the only ones that, have the service that we provide. So I would be crazy to think that I am the only social media strategist in the world. I would love to believe so, but not true. So there are many other people out there, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who provide social media services for their clients. So the question becomes, what would make someone choose my business, choose to work with me versus someone else who does the same thing that I do? And the secret to that is found in your messaging. So, your messaging, as you take a look at your message and we bring it back to impact, your messaging, should give your divine clients the values that you hold dear to your business. It should communicate the why behind your brand. So why is it that you do what is it that you do? And this is what really gives people more reason to work with you. And so if you have not sat down as yet, okay, and got very, very, very clear on your brand message, now is the time to do so. So once again, your messaging is one of the things that have direct, impact, on your business. Also, being clear on your message, and we talked about content, being clear on your message keeps you, it provides a guideline for you for your content. So being clear on your message also lets you know what you need to be putting out as far as your content. It provides those guardrails. That's the word I was looking for. It provides those guardrails for you that as you create your content, you're always coming back to your values. You're always coming back to how you serve in your business. You're coming back to your why. So, once again, being clear on your messaging is key. Now, also, one of the things that I get all the time, and I see it all the time when it comes to messaging, people think that messaging is always about having a sales pitch. So, how many of you think that that's what your messaging is? Like every time you post something, every time you share something, you always have to include that link for people to purchase, or you feel like you have to be salesy. Now, this is one of the biggest things that entrepreneurs struggle with. I see coaches and consultants struggle with it all the time, is the positioning in the marketplace. How do you get your messaging out there, and how do you lead your divine clients on that journey with you without being pushy or without being salesy? And so you can be able to communicate your brand messaging without being salesy or having to include a sales pitch into everything you do. And like I said, this is one of the things that I talk about it all the time. As you put your content out there in the marketplace, the first thing you should ask yourself is, how is this content serving? Okay, so what's the value that I want to communicate in this content? So every time I put a piece of content out into the marketplace, whether it be a video, whether it be a written post, whatever it is you choose to do, how can my audience receive value from that? Now, I don't want people to think that I'm saying that there will never be times that you will promote your business. There will definitely be times that you will promote your businesses, promote your business, promote your programs and your services. You have cycles in your business. So as you create your content plan, you should be looking at your cycles. When do those things happen? And if you're not in a promotional cycle, then you shouldn't just disappear off of social media. You should still be on social media. You should still be marketing. You should still be providing value. You still should be having those conversations that would allow you to nurture your audience, okay, until your promotional cycle opens up as well. And then also going back to why your branding is also important, and in regards to your message, one of the things that you want to take a look at as you think about getting your message out there, what format do you need to communicate, or what format do you need to deliver your message? So one of the questions that I got this week as I was doing discovery calls, I'm back online this week, one of the things that I got is, oh my gosh, what type of content should I be creating? And one of the things that I encourage everyone to know is, as you start to define your audience and you start to take a look at your people, the first question you should be asking yourself is, where are you people hanging out? So do you know where your audience, do you know where your divine clients, where are they spending their time online? And then after you have defined that, then that leads you to knowing what type of content you should be creating. So is it video content if they're hanging out on YouTube? Okay, so I have people say that to me all the time. Like, my clients, are found on YouTube. They consume content on YouTube. And so that's the place where you should be hanging out. And as you create your content and your messaging, it should be formatted for that platform. Okay. And I see that Peg is out there this morning. Great morning. Happy New Year to you. And she is joining us from Maryland. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining. And I see that I have a Facebook user from St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. So I'm not quite sure who that is. And so if you can, let me know your name. Just go ahead and type your name and put VI, because of course I'm hailing from the beautiful Virgin Islands as well. So just let me know who you are. Your name did not come up in the comment section. And Regina is saying, yes, stay in front of mine at all times for your audience. And that's exactly what it is, Regina. As we, go ahead to, oh, hi, Allegra. As we go ahead, and we take a look at our businesses and our content and how we serve, it is about positioning in front of our divine clients. And it's also looking at being a resource. So thank you so much for that, Regina. And so the second thing that I want to cover, in how your impact in the marketplace directly reflects your income, and I think I just touched on it just a little while ago, is what type of content you should be creating, right? And so I'll go ahead and I'll share a short story about me doing videos. So for those of you who know me, have had the opportunity, to, speak with me or either enrolled in one of our programs, one of the things that I share is that I was that person who was deathly afraid of doing videos. Go figure, right? Deathly afraid of turning on the camera. And I definitely labeled myself as the behind the scenes person. And so even though I understood technology and you knew how to work it, I supported thousands of brands behind the scenes, I was deathly afraid of getting on camera myself. And one of the things that I had to pay attention to, or one of the things that, I saw as we're talking about what type of content you should be creating, is how social platforms have shifted. So, how many of you were around when Google Hangouts actually came into play? So if you were around and you were doing videos from Google Hangouts, go ahead and let me know. And I'm going to say this. So one of the things that we all have to take a look at is the shift that's coming into play and how your audience consumes content. Being able to define how your audience consume content and know that. Okay, so like I said, I started out being a back-end support for Google Hangouts, and I remember back in the day, way back when, it was almost like pulling teeth, to get people to show up on camera. Okay. But videos were becoming the wave of marketing back then. Live videos was becoming the rage. And then after Google Hangouts, then immediately what I started to notice was a lot of other platforms showing up. So platforms like Periscope, if you remember Periscope, let me know. If you remember Blab, let me know. There was also Billie Jean. There's like thousands of other video platforms that popped up on the scene. Some of them are still around today. Others have gone defunct. Others have merged and, been acquired by other companies. So here's the thing. As you start to take a look at the content you should be creating, one of the things that requires for you to do is to be able to move with the times. And so, one of the things that I'm taking a look at is really and truly how people are consuming content, and especially live video content. So I'm going to say this is one of the things that I see shifting. How are people consuming live video content? So is it a thing that live videos are going to go away? Or is it going to be, more specific as to where do you do your live video content? Okay, so those are just some of the things to watch. But some of the things that you, or the type of content that you want to look at that creates the greatest impact for your audience is still video, number one. Okay, so what type of videos are you going to do? So, like I just mentioned, are you going to do live videos? And me personally, I love live videos. Nothing beats the engagement of live video. So I'm the type of person, I like to know what's on the mind of the people that I am speaking to. So live video. Or are you going to create short videos? Are you going to do how-to videos? Are you moving into stories? Are you going to do reels that are great for boosting engagement and viewership, on your platforms? So start to think about that. Okay, so if you're creating videos, what's the impact that you would like to have from your videos? And when we talk about impact, set a number to that. So as you do your videos, how many people do you want to get your video content in front of? Is it 1,000? Is it 100,000? Is it 1,000,000? And what is it that takes, what does it take to get that there? Okay. And then also another type of content that, we all are creating is images. So as you especially look at social media, one of the things that I talk about all the time is being able to stop the scroll. So as you do your social media, is your imagery, the thing that's dynamic, that stands out for your audience, that allows them to stop what they're doing, disrupt that pattern that they're in, and make them focus on your content? Then, once again, we're going back to messaging. And so, if you're writing the caption that goes along with your video, or the caption that goes along with your image, how are you serving in that caption? What's the value that you are providing? So, once again, going back to your content, every opportunity to serve. And so this even goes over for things like your reels, things for your stories that you're doing, which are shorter video content. Okay, and I just enrolled in a program where they're talking about doing reels for 6 seconds. And here I was just getting accustomed to doing videos on Instagram for a minute. Now they're telling me that a minute is too long, okay, and we need to get the reels down to 6 seconds, right? So this is going to be definitely one of the things that you're going to see me doing in 2023. I gave myself that challenge. Okay. So it's the opportunity to serve your audience, okay, in those short little pieces of content, and that which would allow you to create greater impact on your business. Okay. And then the next thing that I want to talk about is one of the biggest misconceptions about influence in the marketplace. So, how many of you have a definition or have an idea of what you think influence is? And so, if you have that, go ahead and drop that into the comment section. I would like to know how you define influence for yourself. How do you define influence in your business? Now, one of the biggest misconceptions, and even for me, um, I had to unlearn this and relearn a different definition of influence. So, one of the things that I thought, and a lot of people I've seen it, believes that being influential is about persuading people who don't believe in your product service, they don't believe in what it is you have to offer. Okay, so this is very funny because once again, I've been in this space for quite some time, and I remember when I started back in, I do believe 2010 to 2011, and I started sharing with people about social media. Now, back then, almost 13 years ago, social media was not the in thing. People were still resistant to social media. So I spent a lot of time trying to convince business owners, other entrepreneurs, that they needed to get on social media. Okay. And then eventually, what happened? Times change. People recognize that, oh my goodness, so social media is a crucial part of my business. It's a crucial part of my marketing. And more people decided to get into the space and implement strategies into their business. The same thing with virtual. So I remember when I started, you know, looking at how to turn my business into a virtual business. There was a lot of resistance. People were like, oh my gosh, technology. I don't know how to do this. What do you mean? Store my stuff in the cloud? What's going to happen? Is it going to go away? No. I like to, be in front of clients and touch them versus being online. And I remember having those conversations, with clients about moving more and more of their stuff that they did in their business on virtual, creating online processes. And, there was a lot of resistance. Now, why am I sharing this? One of the things that I had to really get present to, that it wasn't really about persuading the people that didn't believe. So how many of you spend a lot of time in your business doing that, right? You try to persuade other people to your way of thinking versus finding or attracting the people who are on the same wavelength. Okay, the people who know and understand what it is that you're saying, but they just don't know how to achieve it. And you have the roadmap to show them the how. You become what we call the guide to show them how to get the transformation that they desire. So it's a big difference. Okay, and so once again, as we talk about influence, we talk about impact. Creating impact isn't about going ahead and trying to persuade others to your way of being. Is how can you position and how can you attract the people that want what you have, and you touch more of those people, and that's where you create your greatest impact. And so one of the things that, as we take a look at this beautiful word named impact, and this is my word for the year, who are the people that you are going to connect with this year that would allow you to have greater impact? So, as we take a look at that as well, that's another important part, another important piece to take a look at. So, who are you directly connecting with? Are there other influencers in the marketplace that you can serve their audience with the products and the services that you offer? And so a lot of times it's not about being in competition, is taking a look and saying, oh wow, this influencer, they have my audience, they serve the same people that I do, but the products and the services that I offer are totally different than what they offer, but it can support the same audience. And so are you actively seeking out those people? Okay, and that's one of the best ways and the greatest ways, for you to increase your impact in the marketplace. So start to think, who are you strategically collaborating with in 2023? All right. And so I'm just going to pause here and go back to my comments and see what everyone is out here. So Karen is saying, I never used it. I was around hiding in a corner. So Karen, you sound like me, right? So I'm assuming that you're talking about Google Hangouts. So yeah, so I was that person. So I learned Google Hangouts, knew how to operate it, supported, like I said, countless clients, behind the scenes on Google Hangouts, but oh my gosh, did not want to get on camera, did not like to get on camera. But I quickly realized that it was definitely one of the shifts that I had to make in my business if I wanted to continue to grow, right? And stay in the game. So thank you so much for that, Karen. And then Peg is saying, I remember behind the scenes, Taria, and I'm very glad you came out from behind the scenes, behind the camera and took your place out front. And so, yes, so Peg, it's one of the things, and this is why I'm talking about impact and influence in the marketplace, because oftentimes here's kind of like the crazy thing, I'm going to use that word, the crazy thing that we think as entrepreneurs. We think that we could grow successful businesses and we could get the success and all the things that we desire if we just stick to what it is that we love to do and we kind of hide out. But truth be told, people aren't going to find you if you're hanging out. So if you don't know, and this is why I use the word show up, if you don't show up, then you would not give yourself the opportunity to get your messaging into the marketplace and attract the people that you are called to serve. And so, even though, I absolutely love serving behind the scenes, it was one of the things that I had to get present to really quick. Unless Taria showed up and put her messaging, her values, the things that I stand for out into the marketplace, my business would never grow. Okay, and that's the harsh reality of it. And so I see a lot of times that entrepreneurs, they do that, and I hear like, oh my gosh, I can't show up on social media. Oh, I don't want to show up on social media. Social media is too much work, it's so time consuming. But here's the thing, this is, in my opinion, the best opportunity for you. Why? Because you have the ability to show up whenever you want to show up. The world is actually at your fingertips. And this is why I get excited about social media. We just came from a time where we watched the whole world shut down. Okay, live stages were closed, people weren't hosting conferences, people weren't traveling. A lot of people's businesses, once again, the word is impact, was impacted by that. And for those who were able to survive, and come through it, they already understood the shift that was happening, or what could happen, and they were prepared for it, meaning that they were already on social media, they were doing their videos, they were doing their trainings, hosting their programs in a virtual space. And I'm not knocking speaking in person, and doing things, holding workshops or hosting all of those things in person. You should. Okay, but what I'm saying is, no longer can you ignore this opportunity, this beautiful opportunity that's in front of us. Okay, and so for those who were able to shift very quickly, or who are already in the space, or those who were able to shift very quickly, they didn't have much of an impact on their business. But those people that didn't, they struggled, with it. Okay, so yes, that was one of the things, Peg, that I too learned earlier on, that if I stayed silent, I stayed behind the scenes, my business wouldn't grow. All right, and so Regina is out there saying captions are challenging for me. And so, oh my goodness. So, Regina, I know that you had the opportunity to come through our Unleash the Power of Your Story 5-day challenge. And we're going to go back to messaging all the time. And so when we talk about captions, captions are the wording, the description, the text that accompanies what it is that you share on social media. So one of the things that, I just shared, you know, a huge part in attracting people, to your brand is you have to be able to stop the scroll. And oftentimes we stop the scroll if we're posting images, we stop the scroll by our images, right? And so what's the thing that's going to make someone stop and say, oh, this is interesting? Now that you have caught their attention with your image, right? When you look at your caption, how are you serving with your caption? So this is one of the things that I say all the time, Regina, why I love social media. And I now look at social media as what I call a storyboard. So how in your content can you paint pictures for your audience? And this is so key because as you write your captions, as you write your descriptions, you want to make sure that your audience sees themselves in the things that you are putting out in social media. Does that make sense for you? So as you write, always write with your audience in mind. Okay. So the question that I always ask all the time is, how am I serving through this piece of content? So, what is it that I want, ultimately, that I want my audience to get when they read this post? Okay. So, is there a lesson that you want to share? Okay. And that's what I mean by serving through your content. Okay. And once you start to take a look at your captions from that standpoint, or your text from that standpoint, it becomes a whole lot easier. Now, I'm going to say this, and it brings me back into what I call inspirational social media. So here's where it gets tricky, Regina, and here's where it gets tricky, social super achievers. Think about it. How many of you find it very easy to post on social media when you're inspired? So there's an event that occurred and you want to talk about it on social media. And you immediately pick up your cell phone and you open up your app and you go ahead and you post. Okay? And that's fine. I call that inspirational social media. So you're inspired at that moment to share something with your audience. So, how many of you have moments like that? Okay, I know I do. But here's the question that I always ask myself. Regina says that's easy for me, right? So, here's the question that I ask: what happens in those times when I don't feel inspired? So, how many of you wake up inspired every day? Or how many of you have an inspirational message at the top of your head, like every day, 3 times a day? How many? Okay, I know for me, not so much. And so, one of the things that I had to get present to is planning out my content, taking the time to plan my content. And this is what I talked about last episode. So, as you sit down and you write out your goals, how do you plan your content? Because your content serves as that storyboard, and it serves as a way to take your audience on that journey with you. So people get excited, to tune in to what you have to say. People get excited to read your content. They get excited to watch your videos. They get excited to join you on your live because you have strategically thought about what it is that you want to share with your audience. Okay. And so, Regina, I hope that this helps, because one of the things that I say all the time is you have to plan. You have to plan to be consistent. And here's the thing about consistency: consistency leads to success. Okay. And so, if any of us have ever gone back and taken a look at the things that we were successful at, those are the things that we consistently did, or the things that we consistently do. Okay. So, that's why planning is so important. So, are you setting aside, that hour, that 2 hours a week, however long it is for you, that you're strategically planning your content on social media? Okay. And so I see Regina saying collaborations, and Peg is saying often we need to simply get out of our own way. Peg, ain't that the truth? That is absolutely, absolutely the truth. Sometimes we are the ones who are standing in our own way. And I'm glad, Regina, that you are getting clarity from the info. All right. And then I see Peg is saying the social media equals a storyboard. Yes. And so one of the things that I start to look at, Peg, is as I lay out my content plan, and this is, you know, an exercise that I do for my clients. This is one of the products and services that I offer in my business, is how to lay out your 12-month content plan. Okay. And so if any of you are out there and you would like to have a conversation about it, I'll share with you how you could go ahead and book a call with me so we could talk about what it takes to specifically lay out your 12-month content plan. Okay. But that's one of the things. As I take a look at my content board, and I actually have a content board, I look at all of the conversations that I want to have inside of the marketplace. So I take a look at what my broad topics are, the things, that I talk about. And so many of you, my acronym for my business is SHINE. Okay, so I talk about SHINE all the time, how to show up, hone in, create impact and influence in the marketplace, nurture, and create an experience. And so as I take a look at those values, those things that I hold dear in my business, I know those are where my conversations are stemming from. Okay. And so every month I know what it is I'm going to share, what I'm going to talk about, down to the week, down to the day. Okay. So planning your content and having, the opportunity to take your audience on that journey. So can they see your values? Can they see, by the time you get into your promotional cycle and you start to offer, whatever it is you're offering, whether it's an event you're promoting, your programs, your service, some of you have books that you're offering, whatever it is, you have given your audience the opportunity to get great insight as to who you are, what your brand stands for, your big why in the marketplace, and then how you could serve them. Okay. Pexan, I love your 12-month content plan, Taria. So helpful to Shine. Yes. So it's one of the things that keeps me on track with my social media, so I don't feel like as if I'm all over the place. I'm being stretched, I'm being pulled, even at times when inspiration doesn't hit me, I still have stuff that's going out on social media because I took the time to plan it. So great, great, great questions. Okay. So now what I want to take a few minutes to talk about. So now I'm going to give you some how to's. Okay. So that's one.